So we're recording now. And does somebody want to volunteer to start, or shall I pick?
Pick one of the council candidates so I can get a comment and leave.
Okay, so Kevin.
I'll pass because I started the last couple.
Oh.
Okay, so who else do we have? Shannon.
Sure. So, I know it's a cliche saying, but community is only strong as its most vulnerable citizens. And I think when you think about that quote, then you start to see that affordable housing is and this is what the provincial government is, their big mandate now is affordable housing is almost something you should be entitled to. With that being said, I know that here in Stratford there's a huge need for affordable housing, and with the proposed Pertaining Street project, I think that it's going to make life for a lot of families a lot more manageable. There's a call from the provincial government saying that municipalities need to do more in order to accommodate citizens, and I think what Stratford is doing there is great. The income-geared format that I think is going to be used and is currently used with I think it's 600 subsidized housing units that we have in Stratford. I think it's great. In addition to that, I think we also need to be wary of the problem that they're seeing in Mitchell with the developments of neighborhoods that they're seeing there and the $500,000, $600,000 homes. That's just not feasible for a lot of people, especially the middle class. A third of people who are leaving Stratford are middle class, and if you ask them, most of them are saying it's because of the affordability of homes. So making sure that council has a voice in the types of developments that we're seeing on the outskirts of Stratford now, and that we do have affordable options. I know that the municipal affairs, they said that it's not affordable housing, it's the affordability of housing. And I think that kind of goes unnoticed, and we've talked about it in a number of sessions here tonight, but that's something that we definitely need to keep on our radar, especially with retention of youth and whatnot.
Okay. Dan? Yeah, we're just going to go in the circle.
Yeah, it's what Shannon was saying with the new development on Britannia. So I just moved from that area. It's a big space, and it's great, and I support it 100%. And this is low income, but we need to see more. I want to see more housing without a label on it, like low income housing. I know that people can't possibly be, they might be excited to have a place, but they can't be really excited to say, hey, I got low income housing. It doesn't put a swing in your step, you know? You talk to contractors, and I have little notes here. One thing is municipal tax is quite high, especially when you're going to try to build an apartment. Just as like nice medium-sized apartments with 2 bedrooms, something simple. It's really difficult to build that apartment for the average person and so maybe a high-end condo something is far more appealing. I know when we sold our house, we were at the old wartime cottages there. The lineup of people in Stratford and around Stratford that wanted our house was lengthy. Some people from Toronto came in and snapped it up and rented it to one of those Stratford families. There's a friend of mine, he's like, I have no idea you would have ended up in this place, but they outbid them every time. There's no way that, 20 years ago, I had an apartment here, I worked 2 minimum wage jobs, I was able to pay rent, pay taxes, pay my bills, save up, and have fun. Really enjoy myself as a young person. You can't really do that anymore. So at the youth center where I work, I don't know what to tell the 18 and 19-year-olds that are aging out now. I do not know what to tell them. So more options. We have to invite these developers. I don't know if it's incentives, but we need to get them building practical living.
Thank you.
So I think one thing for me that stands out that's been talked about in council before is accessory units in homes. There are a lot of large homes in Stratford. People like to have large homes. A lot of people do. And whether that is you now have empty space in your home because you have children that have moved away and you now have space, whatever the reason, there are a lot of places in Stratford that have a lot of space that could be for other people. So I believe that having that incentive, whether it is to build onto those spaces, to make them a full unit, whether you have a basement that doesn't have a kitchen and a bathroom, and then for that government incentive to come in to then have people turn their spaces into accessory units. I think if you looked at Stratford, there are so many places in town where you would have that option to have someone live in your home, whether it's short-term, and that's a short-term solution, or whether it's someone living in their long-term. I think I know there are so many people on a waiting list in Stratford to have affordable housing. A short-term solution in that case is better than no solution at all. It is a safe place for people to live, it is a clean place for people to live, and I think to have that as a solution, even short-term, is important for people to be having a comfortable place to live. And I think at the end of the day, in terms of housing, having people live in an accommodation that they feel safe in, I think is incredibly important. And I think sometimes with low-income housing, A, there is that title, and B, they don't always feel safe there. And I think that is also part of the issue. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Martine?
I'm thinking with housing, one of the things when I was, after I finished university, et cetera, people rented. No one thought that they had to have a house. Like renting was more popular, and in Europe, a lot of people rent, and they seem to be very obsessed with owning home ownership. And I'm just wondering, I don't have a solution about housing at all, but I'm just wondering if there could be more rental housing and apartment units, like that we try to attract that. I just find that the obsession with home ownership has just increased so much in the last 25 years that I'm wondering if, I don't know what to do about it, but it's, not everyone has to own a home, I don't think.
Can anybody interject to that or not?
Yeah,
Are you done?
I don't
think
have
you
a
go to your
solution
time
about
around
housing.
Yep.
again. Okay, are you done?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, so it sounds like we're talking about I love your kind of redefining low-income housing. It's like plus-size clothing, right? There's that, and then there's also just affordable rental housing, which to me there seems to be the opposite of Durham. Like there's really not. What I've heard actually is that a huge amount of our workforce are traveling in their cars from other places to work. Like, you get to know the guys at the car rental place or whatever, but none of them actually live in Stratford. So many people work here, but they don't live here. Then there's student housing. There's that tier of housing. I'm just thinking about coming from a big city and the way things sort of work. And then you get into the level of people buying small condominiums. I remember cooperative housing. I think there's some models still going on in Vancouver and in Toronto. I don't understand them, but it seemed to be a way that I get on that list, and if I could get into the cooperative apartment that might be an adaptively reused factory, for example, in town that somebody has connected money to through government that attracted a developer to create something where I don't know how interested people are in like having to live somewhere where they have to be on a council, where they have to have meetings like this. But it seems as though if we can think past the really fancy condos for the huge population of wonderful people who want to retire to Stratford because they're in love with the festival or they're in love with Lake Huron or for whatever reason they can afford to have a nice condominium, instead develop affordable rental units that will serve the demographic that is coming, that has to do with the digital industry and with the University of Waterloo. Adaptive reuse. Done. You have anything to say?
Yeah. The
Okay.
lady.
So, this probably isn't as serious as you guys talking. I'm probably just going to talk for like 20 seconds or less because I don't have enough to say. But I feel like if you have a huge house, like a mansion, you should get a smaller house, and then the mansion should be made into like apartment so other people can live into it, and they don't have to buy a huge mansion, and they just have everything. Okay.
Well said. I don't know how you're gonna follow that.
I don't think I should, so.
I'm going to say the same thing.
Yeah, I was thinking I should swap the mentions. No, I'm thinking, as someone who
I guess I brought up in the economy part, but I graduated from school, came here with 6 people, and then after a year, 4 of them left because couldn't afford housing. It was like we were in a 6-bedroom house that was charging up the butt, but it wasn't doable. So right now I'm having a hard time just justifying myself staying in Stratford when I do want to stay here. I do want to do more, but there's nowhere I would do the communal thing. I would live with someone else. I don't know if there's a hub that you can put up. I'm looking for a roommate somewhere easily. I know it's Kijiji and stuff, but that's the only thing that's holding me back to continue to stay in Stratford is where I can stay. Yeah, it's hard. I've lived in a bathtub, but it needs somewhere. But yeah, it's hard to find the information for it that's not buying a home. So yeah, not a solution, but just a concern. Yeah.
Very interesting.
Who's not my friend?
It's all the real estate agents, it's all.
I've gone to a real estate agent before looking for rental, and they kind of laughed, being like, "You're looking for a rental?" They said they call you, but if I'm not buying, why waste their time? I think it makes sense as a business. They're not going to make that much money off me, but there's no one there looking to help people stay here. So, and I'd like to.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, Dan?
When we're looking at housing, we're looking at zoning areas. We have to follow the model that it looks like they're going to follow for the Canyon Street area, where they're actually going to do mixed usage within a single site. There's a few neighborhoods in Stratford. You mentioned one in Mitchell where it's just huge, massive houses. I think it needs to be mixed, and that way, first of all, it'll spread the affordable housing throughout the city, not make clusters of it in different spots. I think it allows, growing up, growing up, we went through the affordable housing route. Okay, it was a transition time for my family. And being in an area where there were people that were successful and were making the best of everything brought everybody up, I believed, as opposed to if you're in an area where everyone around you is struggling, maybe it's a little bit harder to see what the next option is, what the next step is. So I think it's important that we mix all of these housing units together. And I'm not trying to tell somebody that they can't have a $500,000 house, because they should be able to if they can. But with that, there needs to be semis and everything's all in that area, and then the kids play together and the parks are joined and everything's great that way. Also, we need to make sure that we have transportation options available through the housing units. Again, not only because of affordability, but to make it accessible and make it friendly.
Well, Dan, I liked the point you made about the label that goes with low-income housing, because it just leads to ghettos, or at least the perception of ghettos. I'd like to bring up that there's another group that needs affordable housing. We always think of it as the first-time buyers and so on, or the person on a subsidized income that doesn't have a chance to qualify for a house. But there's a lot of seniors. We might think that seniors, all seniors having accumulated something. That's not the case. There are many seniors that are looking for a one-level place that still gives them independence, because they've had independence in some form or other throughout most of their life. But they can't afford to go into the condos that are being built. I think some of the infilling that's going on should address that particular need. That's not to minimize the fact that there are young people and first-time buyers that need the assistance as well. But every senior citizen is not well off, and keeping them in their own home is a lot cheaper than keeping them in a nursing home. So that kind of thing should be looked at.
Thank you.
A couple of different points, picking up a little bit on what Jim had said a minute ago. you've got different segments within the community, whether it's young families, seniors, young singles, students, etc. And I think you really need to evaluate what the cost needs are in each of those different segments. And, you know, what can they afford, or what do you need to have to meet the requirements? And then you work with developers or people that own the land to work to those parameters. I'd like to see us work with staff, developers, landowners to maximize units within the core city areas that are related to transit. So in other words, wherever there's spaces to do infill that make more sense, again, because you've got services in place, you've got transit in place. Repurpose buildings and increase housing in upper floors of the core. And coming back to the talk about the Cooper site, there needs to be residential housing tied into that site that is a mix of different types of housing. The impression is that there's tax incentives when someone has an empty building or an empty space sitting. And that needs to be looked at so that there needs to be incentives to fill the places as opposed to leaving them empty. And the other comment that I had was, even when we're creating the Britannia site, for example, or other housing developments, we need to create neighborhoods. There needs to be public spaces, whether it be meeting place spaces, green spaces, etc., tied into those places, as opposed to taking 5% cash in lieu of green spaces when they do a development, those kinds of things that go on. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you. We have 4 minutes left. There was somebody over here that wanted to continue talking.
Yeah, I just had, I was gonna say something to what Martin had to say, as well as to what Danny.
Yep.
Danny had to say. Just with Danny, a suggestion that I had before in the vision portion was that for an online hub to encompass many things, one of which is housing. That available housing is on the City of Stratford website, that you can go there, click the housing link, and you can see what's available. To me, that would just be a very accessible, very easy thing for people to use, because going on Kijiji isn't always easy to find something, because things in Kitchener come up, things in London come up. You know, you talk to real estate agents, like you said, it's not their priority to find someone housing, right? And so you end up just kind of falling between the cracks. And so I just think to have one place that's very easy and accessible that landlords know to go to, I think would just be simple. And Martine, what you were saying about home ownership, I think that there's just a lot of pride in home ownership. It's something that people see as valuable. They also see it as safe. You own this home. No one can tell you where to go. No one can tell you where to do with it, what to do with it. And so it's a safe place for people to be. And emotional safety is something that everybody is always looking towards. And so I think that just feeling safe in your own place because you know that it's yours, I think that has a lot to do with why people choose to buy. As a single woman, when I lived in Windsor, I worked 2 full-time jobs so that I could save for a down payment to buy a house, because someone that lived by myself, I knew that it was mine. I knew that it was just my place that I could be in and feel safe and secure when I came home from work. So I think that probably, in a very simple answer from my perspective, has a lot to do with that.
I guess, my family, we just rented, and then I rented. So it's perfectly safe,
Yeah.
but, it's just a cultural shift that's happened.
Oh, no, it's okay. A couple things. It's extremely difficult when you talk about housing here because it's so market driven. I mean, someone was just saying the other day they're paying $1,400 for a 1-bedroom basement apartment, and that it's being filled. So the market's there. How do you tamper with an open market like that? And same with the developments that are going on. Like I said before, these expensive homes that are going in there, people want them, and that's the really tough piece. Because then you're getting into policy and stuff that kind of tampers with the open market. And then building off of that, just personally from my experiences, like I stayed at home from university for 6 years and saved up because I see a house as a safe economic investment. I personally, and I think a lot of people resonate with this, I personally like when my money is going to go back into my pocket and not necessarily into someone else's. So I think that a lot of young people here, renting is an option, but ideally home ownership would be the end goal.
Okay.
Then we're gonna go to Martina and Nicole.
No.
Martina, go ahead. Did you have something, Martina?
Oh, just bouncing off Rebecca and you, I think what those on council know and understand and who work on these plans understand that affordable housing is a civic responsibility. So we in Canada have our marketplace, we're able to live in that way, and then we've got our civic responsibility. I don't know the ins and outs of that. And Rebecca, you brought up like a great point. There's actually a health and safety issue in Stratford of finding an apartment. I've heard stories of people who have answered ads and been scammed. There's also the thing of being someone and going to a house and potentially being assaulted. Like, it's a really unregulated kind of thing in the world that the internet has given us this gift of Kijiji and before Craigslist. But it's not. Has anybody else encountered this?
Yeah, it's
Scamming?
not
Is that-
regulated, totally.
Yeah, and there, where somebody's like trying to rent a place in Stratford, and they put down the down payment because they have to get fast, and then the person disappears, and they've just ripped a photo of a. I heard that recently, but it's interesting you bring up the idea of like, when you go to university, like in Toronto, you go to whatever, you go to the housing place, and everybody's registered, and I think it's a health and safety thing. Just it's dangerous. It can be dangerous, yeah.
I'm going to talk really, really quick because I don't have much time. Quickly, I just want to throw everyone, because I really like these sessions, and really quick. Look up inclusionary zoning. I was doing research on inclusionary zoning. It's basically, you want the provincial government to grant powers to the municipality to say, for every building, a certain percentage of this will be geared to a certain